Hello, it's another Terraria speedrun at very high speed. This is a new personal best of mine, but this run is a little bit different from the previous one that I aired a number of days ago, and so I thought that this one was also worth airing at even higher speed. And you might already see one of the major differences. This time we have a corruption world rather than a crimson world. In Terraria, each world is different in terms of the world generation, but there's one very big difference in addition to a number of minor differences between different worlds, and that's some worlds are Crimson worlds and some worlds are Corruption worlds. And the difference between the two is that you get different sets of enemies and a little bit different kind of class of terrain generation. And most notably, there's a different second boss. And the second boss is kind of the key to the progression, especially in this speed run, in terms of doing things. And so it ends up for a very different run. In any case, this one starts out similarly to any other run, where I am just doing some mining for initial resources and exploration, trying to see what I can find. However, since I know that this is a corruption world rather than a crimson world, I need a different overall strategy. The thing is, with crimson, it's very easy to destroy the orbs that will summon the second boss, who's kind of the key to progressing throughout this particular speed run. In the corruption, on the other hand, it's more difficult to destroy the orbs because you need more bombs to get there. Sometimes you'll get super lucky and find a lot of bombs underground, but in the case of corruption, a faster thing to do is to get NPCs that you can buy the bombs from. And so what I'm doing here is I'm building NPC housing, something that you didn't see in my Crimson speedrun. And it turns out that even though there's only one NPC that we're interested in, the Demolitionist, who's the guy who sells the bombs, I need to create 4 NPC houses. And the reason for this is, one is for the guide, who always shows up first. The next is for the merchant, who shows up second and who's a prerequisite for the Demolitionist. And the third is for the nurse, who will show up anytime you have more than the basic 100 health. I've already found a life container, and so I'm already up to 120 health, and so as a result, the nurse is going to show up as well. After those NPCs, then we can get the Demolitionist, once we have some bombs or grenades in our inventory. So I just have to hope to be lucky enough to find some downstairs, and sure enough I will in this run, if I haven't already. So that's building the NPC houses so that we can get the Demolitionist and be able to buy plenty of bombs, because we're going to need lots and lots of bombs in order to take on the corruption. This run is a little bit interesting in that I actually didn't have very good luck with accessories in this run. We'll see that I end up getting through a whole lot of it with only 1 or 2 accessories. However, here I'm very lucky and I find a bunch of rubies at the beginning. In fact, I've got 13 rubies right now, and I actually remembered seeing another pocket of rubies in the wall, and once you have 15 of a particular gem, you can make a grappling hook. And a grappling hook is super useful. In general, mobility is very important for Terraria speedruns, and a grappling hook is one of the easiest mobility things that you can get. I also needed some lead to make an anvil, so I'm mining that up there, and then I was checking my map because I remembered seeing those rubies. Where were they? Oh, there's that pocket of rubies. Great. So, with those rubies located, I quickly finish exploring the cave that I'm currently in, just to see if there's anything good. And once I decide that it doesn't look like there's too much else here, I will head back home. I was getting some clay blocks in case I wanted to farm up some daybloom. Go down and get those rubies after making an anvil, and we can finally make the grappling hook. And with the grappling hook, it will be possible to go down into the pits of the corruption. I talked about the fact that corruption and crimson have different terrain generation. The corruption has deep pits that go almost straight vertical, and so it's very hard to navigate them without having a grappling hook. And here I overshot the rubies, but there they are. I get the rest of the rubies. I save and exit the game in order to get back home, because I don't happen to have recall potions, and make a grappling hook. The ruby hook is actually one of the better hooks, I think, and so it was very fortunate that the gems that I found underground were rubies as opposed to more common things like amethyst or topaz. At this point, I still don't have anything good in terms of armor or anything, so I decided to do a little bit more exploring before I head into the corruption, hoping to find something that's going to help me out. And when I'm exploring down here, I do find a house and an ice chest. But what was in that ice chest? I feel like it wasn't anything too valuable. The merchant arrived, so some of my NPCs are starting to show up. That's the other thing. If you are going to build NPC houses, you need to do it very fast, because otherwise it's going to take some time before the NPCs show up, and if the demolitionist shows up too late, you're just wasting time in your speedrun. And so at this point, I still don't think I have any accessories, but I decide it's time to head over into the corruption. I do at least have a blowpipe, which I can use for some range damage. And there's some ebonwood trees here at the entrance to the corruption, and I can actually make some better weapons and armor out of those ebonwood trees. I'm going to try to chop down one more ebonwood tree over here, but eventually I'll get overrun by enemies. Nevertheless, I managed to get enough ebonwood that I was able to make 2 of the 3 armor pieces. Ah, right, and I got a flipper out of one of those chests. And so that's my 1 accessory. And so I've got 3 defense now, and I've also got a better sword, the Savage Ebonwood sword. And the Demolitionist arrived. So now I'll be able to purchase more bombs. I got some potion-making ingredients, since I had some Daybloom. And in order to purchase the most bombs possible, I do a little bit of selling off some extra things to the merchant in order to make some money, such as all the topaz I collected that I don't need anymore now that I managed to make the ruby grappling hook. Purchase some bombs, and head to the corruption. I also use some bombs to take down large trees. Trees take a long time to chop down, like 10 or 15 seconds. Sometimes you can throw a bomb at the base of a couple of trees and knock down 2 very large trees with a single bomb. I tried that a couple of times in this run and don't actually manage to do it. I only managed to get 1 tree at a time. But now we're using some bombs to go down the deep vertical chasms of the corruption. And now that I actually have a good sword, I can fight off the enemies inside here. Although it is still pretty rough, since I've only got 3 defense, you'll see I go down to very low life here, and have to stand around the campfire in order to heal up for a short bit of time. Now with the bombs, I can get down to the shadow orbs. Once you've broken 3 orbs, you will summon the second boss. And so I'm definitely going to go ahead and break the first 2 in order to get the loot that's inside the orbs. The first orb always gives you a gun. In the corruption world that we're in, it gives you the musket. And the second orb in this world, you can see, has a life crystal right next to it, and so that was very lucky. And the third orb over there has a gold chest next to it, which is also lucky. I got a band of star power, which is going to give me a little bit of extra mana. Unfortunately, I don't think I have any mana weapons, and I'm not going to get one for a long time, so that also didn't help me out a whole lot. Like I said, I didn't have a whole lot of early luck with accessories. However, I just got a rare drop from one of the guys that I killed in here. That was the Arcane Shadow Chainmail, and that gave me a bunch more defense. And so that was super lucky. And so now I've got a good chest plate, and that's going to give me enough defense to feel confident to fight this boss. Now I spend a little bit of time setting up an arena, basically closing off the area from other enemies and giving myself some vertical mobility so that I have some platforms to jump up and down in order to fight the boss. And then I very carefully leave an open space on my hotbar, number 5, before I break the Shadow Orb, because there's a good chance that there'll be a weapon in here. And sure enough, it's the Ball of Hurt, and it's immediately on my hotbar. We've summoned the Eater of Worlds, and I'm using this new weapon that I just got out of the third orb in order to defeat him. Thanks to the armor I just got, I'm going to manage to stay alive. I will need to heal during the battle, but I've got a great weapon. I set up a good arena, and managed to kill off the Eater of Worlds, defeating the second boss, and it's still less than an hour into the run. And so far, this is a very good time. At this point, I teleport back home and start making some things, including the first of 4 swords, the Lightsbane, and I get lucky and get a legendary Lightsbane, which is the luckiest possible enchant that you can get when crafting a particular sword. I also make the Nightmare Pickaxe, which will allow me to dig through the corruption blocks, as well as just dig very fast in general. I purchase some more bombs because I want to fight the Eater of Worlds boss again. If I fight him again, I'll be able to make the helmet that will finish off, as well as the greaves, the leggings, that will finish off this armor set. And with all 3 pieces, of shadow armor, I will both have tons of defense, and also there's a set bonus that gives me, I think, extra melee swing speed, which also means that you can dig faster with the pickaxe, which will be useful for what we're going to be doing next. In order to summon the boss, once again, I simply need to break 3 more orbs. And so, once again, I'm using bombs, as well as doing some digging now that I can actually dig through, in order to get to the shadow orbs. I get another musket. The musket itself isn't useful, but it also comes with ammunition, so I've got some more free ammunition as a result of that shadow orb. And I forget what's in the shadow orb that's upcoming, so we'll have to watch. I had a hard time placing the bombs correctly in order to get in here. Alright, we've summoned the Eater of Worlds again. This time the fight will be easier because in addition to the Ball of Hurt, I can also use the legendary Lightsbane sword. Got into a little bit of trouble early in this one, but fortunately as you start beating sections of this boss, each little section that you kill drops hearts, and the sword that I have is so good that if I hit him in the face, it immediately breaks off one of the sections. And so we managed to defeat the boss again. I go down here, and it was another Band of Star Power, although this one had a little bit of a better enchant. I think I've got 3 Bands of Star Power at this point. So a little bit unlucky with the accessories. I'm still only wearing a flipper and a Band of Star Power, and the Band of Star Power doesn't really help me because I don't have any magic weapons. Alright, but nevertheless, I managed to make all of the armor, and so now I've got a super terrific armor set. Sadly, it's still slow to walk across the land. This is very fast speed that we're replaying the video, but I don't have Hermes boots or anything, and so it's very slow kind of moving through the world. And so I decided to do a little bit more exploration to either find life hearts, such as that life crystal that'll increase my maximum life, or to find some more accessories that'll help me move throughout the world a little bit easier. I also, since I'm in a deep cave, decide to go ahead and dig straight to the Underworld in order to go after the second sword. This is a different strategy than the one that I used in the Crimson World. However, you could use this in any of them. Basically, after beating the second boss, you're probably sufficiently well geared that you can try to go to the Underworld. Unfortunately, I get knocked into lava and die. But that's okay, I'm undeterred. I'm going to go right back there after managing some more inventory. In the Underworld, there are 2 things that you need to mine to craft the Fiery Greatsword, which is the second of the 4 swords that you need in order to complete the speed challenge. You need obsidian, 20 pieces of it, and hellstone, 60 pieces of it, in order to craft the sword. Once again, I can dig down very quickly, and since I have leftover bombs from all the bombs I purchased from the Demolitionist, I also use bombs in order to dig a hole into new cave systems to dig even more quickly. As a result, I'll be able to get to the Underworld pretty fast. I also see some lava and I have some water, and so I combine the 2 in order to make obsidian. And once I have all of my obsidian, I just try to find the fastest route straight down to the Underworld. I also got an umbrella along the way, which helps break fall damage. In general, I find in these runs, I die of fall damage probably more often than anything else. And so getting a cloud in a bottle for a double jump, or a flying carpet, or the umbrella are really good items to help prevent that from happening. Mining hellstone is dangerous because it leaks lava, but we can dig it through the wall. This is the same strategy you saw me use in the other speedrun. Basically, just trying to stay inside the walls in order to mine out the hellstone that we need. And occasionally, after I mine out a pocket, I check how much hellstone we have. There was also an obsidian clock down in these, I don't even know what they're called, like underground castle-y rooms or whatever. And the clock is useful because I don't know what time it is in-game, other than by checking how long I've been playing. And certain enemies, such as Skeletron, can only be summoned at night. And so I pick up the obsidian clock so I can take it along and know what time it is, as far as Terraria is concerned, in-game, so that I know what time to head to the dungeon to try to fight Skeletron at night. But in any case, I do a good job, for the most part, trying to mine out this hellstone. I get distracted by some fire imps over here that I keep having to go up and kill. And we also get a blood moon, which just means that there's going to be more enemies on the surface. But at this point, I'm sufficiently well armored and geared that that's not too bad of a problem. And I think possibly with this group of Hellstone over here, I'm going to have enough Hellstone to make what I need to make. Since there is a blood moon on the surface, I elect to smelt up my Hellstone down here rather than going upstairs, so they'll have fewer zombies harassing me. But then I create the Fiery Greatsword, which is, as it says, a great sword. I'm able to tear through some zombies, and one of them actually drops a shackle, which gives me one more defense, and so I'm finally up to 3 accessories. Still a very low number of accessories for what is now probably an hour and 20 minutes into the speedrun. But we've got great armor, we've got a great weapon, and since it's already nighttime, and by the time I arrive at the dungeon it would be daytime, instead I head to the jungle. Because the dungeon and the jungle are the 2 other destinations for the 2 other swords that we need in order to craft the final goal of the speed challenge, the Knight's Edge. The jungle is to the left. I know this because there was ice to the right, and the dungeon is always behind the ice. I think it's always behind the ice, in the way that Terraria's terrain generation works. And so I work my way over to the jungle, and in the jungle there's 2 things we need to collect: stingers and spores. Stingers drop from hornets and jungle slimes, and spores can be found in clusters that are lit up. The spores are pretty easy to get and to find. The stingers a bit more difficult. We'll see how much trouble I have fighting some hornets over here. I've managed to get a couple of stingers already from the hornets, but I get knocked around a little bit and, just as I mentioned before, die to fall damage. At this point I have some tin bars, and so I elect to make a tin watch as another accessory, both to know what time it is constantly, and also because whenever you craft an accessory, there's a possibility that you'll get a good enchant on it. In this case, my tin watch didn't come with any useful enchant, but sometimes you can get good defense or speed or different kinds of increases. And since it's still morning time, I'm going to head back to the jungle once again and see if we can make some more progress. At this point, I still felt like I was on a pretty good pace. Since the last video, I did improve my personal best in a Crimson World by a few minutes. I'd actually gotten down to 2 minutes and 13 seconds. And so this particular one, which is my new personal best, is going to end up being very neck and neck with that. Got some jungle slimes that I can kill for some stingers. There's some spores to the left over there that you see glowing inside that little cave system. Like I said, the spores are easy because we only need 12 of them. They come in clusters of 2 or 3. The stingers are more difficult because we have to kill difficult enemies who will try to poison you with them. However, at this point, if I can stay alive in the jungle, and we're on top of the jungle temple, which is also not a great place because it means some enemies are going to spawn inside the temple where we can't get to. So once again, I use some bombs and dynamite in order to try to get into different sections of the jungle. But what was I saying? Right. The jungle is also good because at the level of gear we're at, if I can manage to stay alive without taking fall damage, I could find some good things. However, I notice from my clock that it's coming up towards the end of the day, and I need to fight Skeletron at night, and so I warp home, do some inventory management, and this time head right towards the dungeon. And once again, this is actually very slow travel. In fast motion, it doesn't look so bad, but it takes a long time to get there. Once I arrive at the dungeon, I will erect a somewhat meager Skeletron fighting arena. I also check the very entrance of the dungeon to make sure there's not a water bolt spell, because I would not mind having a magic weapon, because I still don't have one. But let's make our Skeletron arena. And for this, I've got the Fiery Greatsword, which is a very good melee weapon, and I also have the musket with a lot of bullets. And so those 2 things should be enough for taking on Skeletron. Sometimes you just go for the head, sometimes I also go for the hands. Since I have the Fiery Greatsword, as I swing it and it's so large, I manage to destroy some of the hands, which makes Skeletron easier. If I get low on life, I'll run back and forth and just try to shoot him with the musket. When I can tank him more, I'll get up close and hit him with the Greatsword. And for the level of gear that we're at, since we've got the full shadow armor, Skeletron goes down relatively easily, and he has a rare drop, where he dropped a magic spell, so that was pretty cool. So now I've got a spell in the 4th slot, and unexpectedly, the corruption intersected the dungeon, which I'd never seen before. apparently that can happen about 1% of the time. And so I had to dynamite through the corruption blocks, or I could have just dug through them, but that would be a little bit slower, and I had dynamite in my inventory. But unfortunately, I accidentally killed myself with the dynamite, which means another slow walk back over to the dungeon, which eats up another couple of minutes of time in this run. But here we are back at the dungeon. I can finish dynamiting through the Ebonstone and actually to get into the entrance, and this time I'll make sure I stay out of the way of the dynamite. The dungeon will really make or break a speedrun, because finding the Muramasa, there's often like a dozen chests in the dungeon, and the Muramasa will be in one of them, or sometimes two of them. If you find it in the first chest, you're doing great. If you find it in the last chest, you'll spend a half an hour going through the dungeon over and over. I get super lucky, and the Muramasa is in the first chest that I check. And so, I picked it up right there. Now we can head back to the jungle. We have 3 of the 4 swords. The only thing we need left is to get those stingers and spores from the jungle, so that we can construct the Blade of Grass, the 4th of the swords, and then take that back to a demon altar, where we can combine the 4 swords into the Night's Edge. And at this point, I know the run is going well, and I have a real chance to get a personal best. Previously, when I went into the jungle, we ended up on top of the jungle temple, and so I was trying to see if I could find kind of a different way to go that would keep me away from the temple, where I'd get more good monster spawns, and I see lots of hornets and things flying around here. So long as I can stay alive, I'll be doing well. I used some buff potions, because I still have some iron skin and regen, and I managed to get, I forget, there was one more accessory there. That wasn't too helpful, but then I find a life crystal, and momentarily I'm going to find more life crystals. Oh, I got a Jagged Nature's Gift as another accessory, which gives me a little bit more damage. And I finally got some Hermes boots. It's a little bit too late in the run, now that I've already done all the running across the world, like 5 times, but it's still nice to have them. I see the last of the spores that I need, and at that point I think I just need to focus on the stingers. I keep finding life crystals. Like I said, there's a lot of good loot in the jungle, and so if you can manage to get here early and stay alive, you get a lot of good stuff, but it's very hard to stay alive early before you have good defenses and a fair number of life hearts. But at this point, I think I know that I'm on a great pace, and so it's just a matter of trying to light up the area so I can see what's going on, locate and find the various hornets and jungle slimes, and collect those stingers. And so periodically I'll be checking my inventory just to get a count of how many stingers I have and how many I still need. I think my previous run was 2 hours, 13 minutes, and a few seconds. And this one, I think somewhere around 2:10 or 2:11, I finally get all the materials that I need to head back home. And so it ends up being a real race to see if I'm managing to get a new personal best, or if I'm not going to be able to top my old time. Had a lot of people watching during the stream at this point, and so it was pretty exciting for all of us, I think. I don't remember how much is left here to get. I find a bunch more life hearts, but at this point I'm pretty happy and I just want to focus on the stingers. And I managed to get them. So we craft the Blade of Grass, and we're going to finish with the new personal best of 2 hours, 12 minutes, and 14 seconds. Hooray! Thanks for watching.